Before Kristy McNichol became a familiar face on television screens across America, her life began without glamour or certainty. Born in 1962, she entered the world during a time when stability was something her family worked hard to maintain. Her mother, Carolyn, wasn't chasing fame or fortune. She was simply trying to survive. Juggling multiple jobs, from office work to selling cosmetics, Carolyn did whatever she could to keep food on the table. Hollywood entered their lives almost by accident, when she brought her children along to a small film set out of necessity, not ambition. While Kristy stayed shy and overwhelmed, watching from a distance, someone noticed her quiet presence and suggested she try auditioning. That single moment shifted the course of her life. What followed wasn't a carefully planned rise to stardom, but a gradual pull into an industry that would soon demand more from her than anyone could have expected from a child so young, growing up too fast in front of the camera. Kristy's early success arrived quickly, and with it came responsibilities far beyond her years. When she was cast as Buddy Lawrence on the television series Family, audiences connected instantly with her emotional depth and sincerity. What viewers didn't see was how closely that maturity mirrored her real life. At home, Kristy often felt more like the caretaker than the child, managing responsibilities while her mother worked endlessly to stay afloat. On set, she treated acting not as a dream, but as a job, showing up prepared, focused, and dependable. That seriousness made her stand out, but it also meant her childhood quietly slipped away. While other kids explored who they were, Kristy was being shaped by expectations, schedules, and constant observation. Fame didn't arrive as a celebration, it arrived as a responsibility. And though the praise was real, it came with pressure that never fully eased, setting the stage for an adulthood shaped by resilience rather than innocence. Success, applause, and a life on fast forward. By her late teens, Kristy McNichol had become one of the most recognizable young stars in America. Awards, television appearances, film roles, and even music projects filled her calendar, leaving little room to breathe. She earned major industry recognition for her performances, proving again and again that her talent was no fluke. Yet behind the scenes, the pace was relentless. Days blurred together as one commitment flowed into the next, often without her fully choosing any of them. Saying yes became automatic, driven by a desire to please and a belief that rest was something she hadn't earned yet. The applause was loud, but it didn't offer grounding. Instead, it pushed her forward faster. Even projects that became cultural touchstones came at a cost, draining energy she didn't realize was finite. To the public, she seemed composed and thriving. Privately, the weight of constant motion began to quietly take its toll. When the pressure became too much, the turning point in Kristy's life didn't arrive suddenly. It built slowly, layer by layer. Years of nonstop work, public scrutiny, and emotional restraint eventually reached a breaking point. While working overseas in the early 1980s, far from familiar support systems, she found herself exhausted in ways she couldn't ignore. Sleep became difficult, emotions harder to manage, and the joy she once found in performing began to fade. What happened wasn't failure, it was fatigue. Her body and mind were signaling that something needed to change. Stepping away from a project was not an easy choice for someone who had spent her life pushing through, but it was necessary. Later, she would describe this period not as a single crisis, but as the result of carrying too much for too long. For the first time, her health had to take priority over expectations, even when the world was still asking for more. Choosing balance over momentum. After taking time to recover, Kristy returned to acting with a different perspective. The urgency that once drove her had softened, replaced by a growing awareness of her limits. She became more selective, choosing roles that felt manageable rather than overwhelming. Television eventually brought her back into audiences' homes through Empty Nest, a series with a gentler rhythm and a more supportive environment. The role offered stability, but even then, she remained attentive to her well-being. When it became clear that continuing at the same pace would come at too high a cost, she made another difficult decision and stepped away once again. Walking away wasn't about quitting, it was about listening. She later spoke openly about living with bipolar disorder, helping to normalize conversations that were rarely had at the time. Each choice she made reflected a growing understanding that success meant nothing if it came at the expense of peace. Stepping away from fame. With intention, Kristy McNichol's departure from Hollywood wasn't dramatic or defiant, it was quiet and deliberate. In 2001, she officially announced her retirement from acting, explaining that it was time to stop playing roles and start living authentically. For someone whose identity had been shaped so early by public perception, this decision was deeply personal. Fame had offered opportunities, but it had also demanded silence and compromise. By stepping away, she reclaimed control over her life. There was no bitterness in her words, only clarity. She described the choice as one of the best she had ever made. Away from cameras and expectations, she found space to breathe, reflect, and simply exist without performance. Her absence wasn't an escape. It was a return to herself. In an industry that often celebrates endurance at all costs, Kristy's decision stood as a reminder that walking away can be an act of strength. Living honestly, on her own terms. Years after leaving the spotlight, Kristy chose to share another deeply personal truth. In 2012, she publicly came out as a lesbian, not for attention, but to offer reassurance to others who might feel alone. By then, she had been in a long, loving relationship with her partner, Marty Allen, for many years. Her decision was rooted in compassion, especially for young people navigating identity under pressure. It was a moment of honesty that reflected how far she had come, from living under scrutiny to living openly and freely. Loss had also shaped her journey, deepening her appreciation for quiet connection and emotional safety. Rather than defining herself by her past fame, Kristy focused on building a life centered on love, trust, and authenticity. It was a chapter written not for headlines, but for healing, rediscovering joy beyond the spotlight. Leaving Hollywood didn't mean leaving creativity behind. In the years that followed, Kristy rediscovered music, not as a performance, but as a source of joy. She enrolled in a college music program, joining a choir, and learning simply for the pleasure of it. There were no critics, no ratings, no expectations, just expression. Music became a way to reconnect with herself, to experience art without pressure. She also found fulfillment in giving back, supporting artistic communities, and engaging in quiet volunteer work. Travel became another source of renewal, offering perspective and freedom she hadn't known in her youth. Hawaii, in particular, became a place of peace, a symbol of the slower, more intentional life she chose. These moments, once overshadowed by deadlines and scripts, now formed the foundation of her happiness. It was a life shaped by choice, not obligation. A legacy defined by courage, not comebacks. Kristy McNichol's story isn't one of disappearance, it's one of evolution. While fans may still wonder about her return to acting, she speaks of the future with calm openness rather than longing. There is no urgency, no unfinished business pulling her back. Her legacy isn't defined by how long she stayed famous, but by how bravely she chose herself. In an industry built on visibility, she found fulfillment in stepping out of view. Her journey reflects a truth often overlooked. Success doesn't always mean more, it sometimes means less. Less noise, less pressure, less performance. Today, Kristy McNichol stands as a reminder that a meaningful life doesn't require constant applause. It requires honesty, balance, and the courage to listen inward. And in choosing peace over permanence in the spotlight, she wrote an ending far rarer than fame, a life lived fully, gently, and on her own terms.